It's not every day we get to speak with marketing ops royalty, and today we are so excited to be able to sit down with Anne-Marie Corbett, also known as the infamous AMC. I've had the pleasure of working with AMC as she has scaled the marketing operations function of one of the fastest growing companies in cybersecurity, ChainGuard. Today she's going to walk us through how to go from 0 to 60 with marketing ops and what it takes to operate a company at hyperscale. Also, co-hosting with me today is the head of our marketing operations practice, Sean Kennedy. Sean has led marketing operations for some of the biggest names in tech, including Gainsight and Front, and has led a number of marketing operations engagements since joining LeanScale. Sean, thank you for co-hosting with me, and AMC, thank you so much for being here today.
So excited. Thanks for having me. I think royalty might be a little much. I think I am just a product of some really great teams that I'm lucky to work with, but I'm really excited to be here with both of you today.
I mean, I just feel lucky to be here with you, AMC. Yeah, really excited to be here. And yeah, can't wait to dig into some really good topics today.
Absolutely. And I think the title is perfect given the work that we've done together. So, well, let's kick things off. I think one of the themes that is really important, especially for people who are working in marketing ops today, is understanding how to convince senior leadership of the value and how to invest more in the function. So I'm curious, I know you've built marketing operations functions from scratch. You've worked in marketing operations at the highest level of scale. What's your perspective on communicating the value of marketing ops to the organization as a whole?
I think you need to be really specific about your charter from the beginning. It's super important to be viewed as a strategic partner, and the product that you're delivering is critical to business value, just like closing a deal would be or launching a marketing campaign. I think if you devolve quickly into just tactic or execution or being the go-to person for every oddball project that comes across marketing's desk, you won't be able to build a strategic marketing ops team, and you won't be able to help add value to your marketing leadership.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. And I think a big part of becoming a strategic partner and not just a request fulfiller is really about being curious and learning more just about how the entire marketing and sales org functions and what other teams care about, how they operate, and then how marketing ops can help those teams. And that'll allow you to actually be proactive as opposed to reactive. And then over time, you'll start to be perceived as a strategic partner, which I think is really, really important to increase the value or the perceived value of marketing operations internally. So totally agree with you there.
So the critical part to making sure that you are providing value from a marketing ops team perspective is making sure that you realize you are a service center to marketing operations, supporting sales, BDRs. So you need to understand what your customers need and you're able to service them appropriately. It doesn't mean answering to every need and just becoming a request fulfiller, but making sure that you're providing strategic value. Part of that is forward looking, making sure you're staying current with technology trends or reporting themes that have been coming out to make sure that you know how to meet your business where they are and help them grow into a better future state, becoming more efficient either through technology or other advancements.
On that point, AMC, I'm actually curious, is there is there a go-to place that you have to kind of stay current with kind of advancing technology within marketing operations to that point of always being seen as like someone who's strategic, who's kind of on the cutting edge? Do you have any go-to places for something like that?
I actually check in with a lot of different Slack channels myself. Of course, you put me on the spot and I'll butcher the names, I'm sure, but I'm happy to send them along so you can link to it after the fact. But there's a lot of rev ops or marketing ops Slack channels out there that I lean into, ask questions about, because we're all solving the same problems differently for our organizations. And I think it's really important to lean on each other. There's no real great you can't go get a degree in marketing operations where you could potentially for PR or, business comms or things like that. But marketing operations for a lot of us is something we kind of stumbled into. And so we're leaning on each other as a community to learn and grow each day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that was a selfish question from me.
Right.
I was curious on that one. So that's great to know. Yeah, I would love to hear what those Slack communities are. But
yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely. I'll pull a list together. I think that, and you grow your network. Just like we're talking here today, and I'm sure you've met plenty of people along the way that you lean on, but you're kind of working through your network because you're all stumbling through this together, and then you pick up what you learn and you keep sharing that advice.
Awesome.
I'm curious about, because this is something I've struggled with in RevOps in general. I know a lot of people struggle with it when you're balancing day-to-day fires, little things that you got to do. Like I imagine like campaign operations, there's just so many little tactical things that have to get done every day. And you, in your charter, are responsible for getting those things done. But at the same time, keeping your eye on the North Star. How do you prioritize strategic initiatives that are going to move marketing operations and the business forward while keeping the lights on day to day?
A lot of coffee. No, caffeine. Yeah, Celsius drinks. No, I think that once a month or so, I try and do a regroup with our team. What are we trying to prioritize? At minimum, it has to be quarterly, making sure that you're checking in with your teams throughout the quarter and saying, okay, here are our big projects. The thing about becoming a tactical execution center, because you are a service center, is a certain amount of your time is being eaten up with the day-to-day projects, whether it's setting up an email through a system, workflows, reporting. That becomes the always on drumbeat of marketing operations. So you have to make sure that you have enough time in your week, in your month, to do those level of campaign execution while also, not filling up 100% of your time, or in some cases 120% of your time, and you save it to about 80% so you can spend 20% moving the needle forward or learning new things or building your skill set.
Yeah, I think that gets a little easier the bigger your marketing operations team becomes, because then you can get more specialized and you have someone who's dedicated to campaign operations, and you're okay with the majority of that person's time being spent on the kind of day-to-day tasks. But to your point, AMC, when your team's a little bit smaller and everyone's kind of sharing responsibilities, everyone's doing a little bit of everything, I agree, quarterly planning becomes so important. And then something's getting really tactical here. Something that I've actually done is I put a project that's just, hey, day to day run, maintain the biz, and actually have that as a project in my plan to make sure that I'm accounting for how much time that's taking relative to all of the other strategic projects that I have going. So super tactical thing, but that's something that I've done to make sure that I'm balancing all of those things correctly.
Yeah, it's a very tough thing to balance. And in any operations role, it's something that you're going to encounter. So I've always tried to do I like the Eisenhower prioritization matrix, where you kind of matrix things on things that are important and urgent. Important, urgent things you do right away, of course. And then things that are super urgent, but maybe not so important. If you can delegate, do it. But you don't always have the luxury of doing that. And then really, really spend as much time as you can on things that are really important but not urgent yet, because they'll become urgent soon.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that leads me to another question that is really, really difficult for people to know how to build and bridge the gap. Because Sean, you were bringing up, you may be a marketing operations team of one, or you may have somebody who's doing marketing and half their time is marketing operations. So when you're building out your team from scratch, so a team doesn't have any marketing operations, maybe they're just getting their marketing team off the ground, what process do you follow? What roles come first? What's your thought process on when to bring on certain functions? How do you build it when you're starting from zero?
I think it's really important to bring on a person who has been there, done that, but they don't have to be super senior. A senior manager level would be great if you can find it, but I don't think you need a director or senior director level hire right off the bat. You just want someone who has a few years experience with a marketing automation tool, whatever one you're using, your CRM tool, whatever one that is, whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce or anything like that. And you need them to understand the basics that executives, marketing, and senior sales leadership needs from reporting. Because if you can have that view, you can partner with them. You can partner them with an outside agency for kind of the day-to-day execution and build out. That's one of the ways that we've started to scale up ChainGuard here, is working with Lean Scale and being able to kind of build out the foundations we know we need that makes sense for our business, while partnering with an agency to try and figure out the best way to build it on the back end of those tools. And we feed off of each other and try and build it out from an infrastructure standpoint. I think you start there. You have those teams kind of build to a point where maybe you're realizing the in-house marketing ops person needs a little bit more strategy, or they need to elevate their game, or they've elevated their game and they need someone to come in and help them kind of do the campaign execution, your campaign technician that can handle that in-house. You can usually get along for probably about a good year and a half, 2 years of that kind of partnership if you find the right people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just to add to that, I think when you're looking for your first marketing operations hire, something that I tell people a lot of the times is you want someone who also just has seen things done in multiple ways. So if they've just been at a single company, and maybe that's good enough because maybe they've been at that company for a while, they've held a variety of different roles within that company, so they've kind of viewed things from a bunch of different angles. But ideally, in my mind, if I could craft my perfect first marketing operations hire, I would love someone who has seen things done at multiple different places. Because to your point earlier, AMC, there is no college course or university for marketing operations. So how people learn is on the job. And so having that experience and seeing things done from at multiple different places, I think allows you to come in as a first marketing operations hire at a new place and gives you that confidence of knowing hey, I have options in my head of how we could approach this. And I can adapt those to the unique needs of this current business. So that's the only other thing I would just add on top of what AMC said in terms of who you should be looking for your first marketing operations hire.
Yeah, and one thing that I like that you said, AMC, because I think this is actually a lot easier to do now than it was before. I think post-COVID, pretty much ubiquitous work from home environment, especially in B2B technology companies, it makes it a lot easier to bring on fractional experts or work with agencies. I think before it felt a little bit like they couldn't be as embedded in your business. They were a little bit more removed. You had your teams in the office that worked together, and then sometimes you call your agency and they felt just a little too separated. I know at Lean Scale too, we use agencies and we use fractional executives and fractional workers to help us build our company too. And you really can assemble a team with fractional and agencies a lot easier now than I think you used to be able to.
Yeah.
And it meets your business needs where they are as well. I would say, you look at the tenure of a CMO and it could be anywhere from 18 months to 3 years. That's really a long time for a CMO to be in one organization, but it's because of business changes. So your marketing needs change along that pathway, just like marketing ops needs will change along that, the evolution of your company and your marketing team. So bringing in fractional support to help you where you are, whether that's really diving into attribution if you need it, or setting up your technologies for the first time, or building out a reporting suite. These things will change as you evolve and as you grow, and you can find full-time support and piece together the other the other nuggets that are coming along that are the fires you're trying to put out, with fractional support or agency support.
Yeah, to that point, something we talk about at Lean Scale all the time is it's really hard to find operations people that have experience with everything within, marketing operations or everything within sales operations. Usually they spike in one area or another. Usually they're, oh, hey, they're really good data analysts, but they don't know much about campaign ops or systems. Or, hey, they're like a HubSpot expert, but they haven't like presented data to executive teams in important meetings. You know what I mean? So it's like, a lot of times you have to pick one, and that should really be based off of the unique needs of your business. And then just to add on what both of you are saying, I think now more than ever, it's becoming more and more common for people to kind of pick what they really need in-house and then augment where there's gaps, through fractional support outside of the org. And I think that's becoming a more and more of a successful strategy for teams.
Yeah, I think the only thing you can't outsource, and we tell our customers this all the time too, is decision making. Mm-hmm. So you can get decision support, you can get execution support, but somebody calling a shot on whether we're going to do X or Y, that's not something that you can outsource. So I like the idea that you brought up is, okay, I need somebody senior enough who can make decisions. We can supercharge them with fractional agencies as needed, but you do need somebody in seat who can call a shot.
Absolutely. That's critical. And that person needs to be a really great communicator. They need to be able to bridge the gaps between, especially as you're building a function out from the ground up, between marketing, between sales, between CS, finance, and leadership. They have to be a unifier, or none of the teams will be successful, because you do have to find compromise along the way.
So typically, in your experience building out these functions, once you brought in that hire, you may sprinkle in an agency or two. What role would typically come next, and when do you see that needing to happen? What's that critical factor that says, hey, we need to start investing in these areas?
There are two roles that I would see coming next. It would be campaign ops, campaign execution. I shouldn't say that. 2, 3. You've got your senior person in there that's helping drive strategy. They're rolling up their sleeves and they're still doing. But when they've reached a point where their whole day, their whole week becomes campaign execution or troubleshooting or cleanup, then you probably need to bring in a specialist, or not necessarily entry level. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest challenges in marketing ops right now, is how do you get a foot in the door, right? So yes, probably an entry level person that's hungry, but how do you get some experience if you haven't used the tools yet? So trying to get someone in who's got a little bit of experience with your tools, that can pick up the execution of campaigns for you, so that you, as that kind of senior leader on the team, can continue to build out the strategy and maintain the technologies. I'd say another big piece is a specific technologist. For example, do you need your HubSpot expert or your Marketo expert? Do you need a Salesforce expert in-house? That can be a critical next step, because there's just so much unique knowledge in those tools. And I would also say data analysts and data management has to be critical. Those are going to be some roles that come very quickly thereafter, from building out your team, because if you're not maintaining data in a good place and you can't build out the reports that you need, you're not going to be providing value to the business quickly. And I think that's the biggest opportunity for marketing ops, is provide that analysis of what's working, what's not working. All of these systems are in place so that you can prove the value of not just sales, but marketing and marketing operations.
Yeah, and even just taking a step back, I think in general, when your days become totally consumed by the tactical and you don't have time for those long-term strategic initiatives, that can happen really quickly. And I think to me, that's a pretty clear signal that either one, something's not working like it should because you're spending too much time on maintaining your systems, when maybe if you had built them or designed them the right way, things could have been a little less maintenance heavy. So there's honing your craft plays a little bit here. But in general, when the tactical totally consumes you and you're not able to focus on the long-term strategic initiatives, to me, that's a signal that something needs to change or resources need to expand in some way. So, and I think that can come in a variety of different ways, and it's really a matter of what the business needs. To AMC's point, like maybe the business is really lacking on talent with analyzing data and extracting insights from it on the marketing org or sales org. And so that becomes a really high priority. Or maybe you're going 2x, 3x on your event strategy, and you just want to do a ton of events, and that becomes a really important channel for you. So all of a sudden, and a campaign ops focused person becomes really, really important to fill that gap. So I think all things being equal, I totally agree with what AMC said in terms of kind of how to think about progressing the marketing operations team in the kind of traditional order. And then I would just layer on top of that it really depends on your business and what it needs at that point in time.
Agency time and reviewing how much time you're spending with an agency to meet those needs, whether it's campaign execution, for example. If you're spending 50 hours a week working with an agency for campaign execution, it's probably time to hire an in-house person, because you're not leveraging that agency to the best of their ability anymore either, unless they were specifically brought in for that. You want to be looking at that every 3 to 6 months to make sure that you're leveraging your agency's time in the best way for your business. And when have you hit that point of no return where you've actually built a business case for yourself to bring a person in-house as you scale up the team?
I think that makes a lot of sense. And you want to make sure you're getting the biggest bang for your buck out of the agency partnerships that you have, and taking their specialized experience and putting it to work.
Exactly.
I think that perspective of volume of work is a really good way to gauge when you probably need the next roles. Now, my experience, you both can correct me if I'm wrong, when you're talking to a CFO or CEO, their level of empathy for the volume of work might not be as acute as ours.
Totally, yep.
So are there any other indicators that you use to justify the investment in these roles? And are there any typical benchmarks? So are you looking for are you looking for a volume of pipeline build or lead build that you're bringing into the table to say, hey, this is why we need this role? Or are there certain ARR benchmarks that you would say, hey, if you're at 10 million or 20 million, this is probably when you need this big of a marketing ops team? What are your thoughts on those? I'm thinking those might resonate more with the executive teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think there are metrics. I hesitate to say it's always this, if you do 20-to-1 ratio or 10-to-1, or whether you're looking at, well, we brought in X amount of sales reps, and therefore we are also going to add headcount in marketing to support the sales reps. All of those numbers will be so variable depending on your business. I mean, I've seen it across a couple of different industries at this point where the deal volume, the deal value and size will change, and the amount of lift that it takes or the time to close the deals will have impacts on how many campaigns, how much marketing support, how much sales support you need to be providing to get them across the line. And so I don't want to say, oh, my rule of thumb is always this, but you should start benchmarking pretty quickly in the course of building out your team. How many touches go into closing a new deal, both marketing and sales touches, and who's involved in the cycle, and how many marketing campaigns are involved, and how much marketing support is involved. That will start giving you the benchmarks of, okay, well, this many hours went into this deal, or these many campaigns, or these many sales touches, and that will help you gauge when it's time to build. But I think sometimes companies are like, well, we divided our territories this way, so we're just going to drop people in. And we artificially throw people into territories or align marketing teams when maybe we could squeeze a little bit more juice out if, to Sean's point earlier, we got a little more efficient with our processes. We leveraged technology a little bit differently. We documented our processes a little bit better. Or, we made some more scalable programs. If we do those things, we might be able to get, squeeze a little more juice out of it and not need to hire quite so quickly. But I do think that's a critical part of marketing operations, is partnering with go-to-market operations, with finance and sales, to say, what is a business trajectory for this year, for 3 years out, for 5 years out, so you can start helping marketing leaders determine how many marketers they need and how many marketing ops team members will be required to support that level of growth.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think a big part, I mean, maybe this is a me thing, but I've always found it really hard to assign, pure business metrics to, and map that to, hey, once you reach a certain level here, you need to get the next marketing ops person in, or the next sales, it really just ops in general. That applies to sales ops as well. I've always found that really, really difficult to do. So one thing that I've done that I've seen help here is being a little bit more meticulous about tracking the work that you're doing, whether that's, hey, I know it's annoying and people don't like to do it, but trying to get people to fill out a form internally to so that it lands on a request board, so that way you can track everything, so that way when you do need to talk to the CFO, you kind of have the proof a little bit of like, hey, look at all of the stuff that we've been doing. It's taking this much of our time. And then your experience comes into play a little bit here, because you will be able to know, hey, I've seen a really well-oiled marketing operations team before, and I know all of the valuable stuff they were doing, and I feel it's imbalanced right now. And here's how it's imbalanced. And here's all the stuff that I don't have time to do that I could be doing. And usually it's pretty obvious how valuable those things are. It's like, hey, here's this big strategic initiative that I could be doing, but I don't have time to. Here's another, and here's what I'm spending my time doing. I think this stuff is the most important because it needs to happen, but I wish that I could be spending more time here, and I think it would be most beneficial to the business. So tracking your work really, really meticulously, it's annoying, it takes time, but I think you're going to pat yourself on the back when you do have that discussion with the CFO, when you do have that discussion with the CMO, because you'll kind of have the proof. So that's the only thing I would add on top of what AMC said.
How detailed do you like to get with that? I know at Lean Scale, it's a little bit different because we're working with, as an agency, we're working with customers, so we need proof of work, of course. But for an internal ops role, how meticulous do you get? What tools do you use to track it? How do you like to set up that infrastructure?
Most operations team members are a little bit more type A than others maybe in creative teams. So, when you say things like time tracking for some of my creative teams I've worked with closely in the past, say, oh no, please don't do that to me. But the reality is we kind of know what we're doing. So it is important you're going to have it in a Monday board. You're going to have it in an Asana board or some sort of tracker like that. Detailing hours, I think, becomes critical when you're getting closer to the next hire. But, it's a little different from an agency perspective where, as you mentioned, you're kind of time tracking to show value to customers. But the tighter you get, it not only helps you build the benchmark for when to hire, but it also helps you plan a week accordingly. One of the conversations we've had is, when can things go off the rails? And for marketing ops teams, I think where it can go off the rails is when people don't realize the value of what you're doing. When things are working perfectly for operations teams, you don't know that things are happening in the back end. We make it look easy, right? Like the tools they just talk to each other. There's no rogue leads getting assigned out that need to be reassigned. There's no missed tracking. All the alerts are perfect. Data's being appended. But that all takes work on the back end. And when it just happens perfectly and you haven't been able to build your case by showing the elements that go into perfection, if you will, then you're doing yourself a disservice. If you can turn a landing page around in a day or an email in a half a day, then the teams will start to expect that from you, and you make yourself you've done yourself a disservice because you can't they expect it every time, and then you can't build the case for another person because you're just executing flawlessly, and you're burning yourself out and you're burning your team out. I don't know if that necessarily answers the question of how much you should be tracking, which I know is where this started, but I think it's important to build that case and the value that ops is providing. So you should be tracking all along that an email takes X amount of days or a landing page takes Y amount of hours.
What you just said just hits so close to home. Like I think it's so interesting. It's such a weird phenomenon where a well-oiled marketing operations team is kind of like a quiet marketing operations team because things are just work. And so when things are going bad, and then you fix them, it's weird because sometimes like the marketing operations teams, it feels like they get more recognition as opposed to when
you get a hero moment.
Right. You get this hero moment. It's like, hey, everything broke, everyone freaked out, and then the marketing operations person swooped in and saved the day. It's like, wow, marketing operations is so valuable, Whereas like I would much rather not have that day come at all to begin with, but then you're kind of quiet, So then to AMC's point, documenting what you're doing and then really educating people internally constantly about what marketing operations is doing. I don't think I've ever reached a point at any company where I felt like, oh, I don't need to educate people anymore about what marketing operations does. It's always like, I always have to feel like I'm reiterating, hey, this is what we do. This is why we do it. This is why it's important. And kind of re-cementing that over and over and over again in people's heads, I think helps to make sure that things don't go off the rails, that the value you're providing is clear, that people know that what you're focusing on is important. I think it's a little annoying because I genuinely think that there are a lot of other functions within the go-to-market org that don't have to do that because it's just inherent. Like if you're a sales rep, it's just so clear the value that you provide, right? You close the deal, right? If you're a content writer and you produce a really good piece of content, it's just so obvious because people just read that piece of content and they're like, this person is great at writing content. With marketing operations, you kind of have to promote yourself a lot. And I think that really helps to make sure that things stay tight and don't go off the rails and you're able to maintain focus on what's actually important.
And isn't that an interesting position to be in? Because most of the marketing ops teams that I've worked with, sales ops as well, are some of the most humble, not looking for the limelight stars that you'll work with on a team. They just want to come in, do it, kind of put their head down, figure out how to make some really complex challenge come to life easily, smoothly, and kind of shrink back into, well, everything's working easily. But to be as successful as possible or put the business on notice that marketing ops is a critical function, you need to put the star over yourself a little bit, which is an uncomfortable place for a lot of operations team members to be in.
It is very uncomfortable. And I think that leads to one topic I was really hoping that you two could shed some light on, because you both have bridged the gap of coming into a marketing team, going into a marketing operations team, and then moving into really significant revenue leadership roles. And I think a lot of people, to your point, AMC, struggle with bridging that gap from being an incredible operations executor to becoming a leader. And it sounds like self-promotion in the right way is a part of the equation, but what else helps somebody get to that next stage in their career and get a true seat at the table with the revenue leadership team?
So I think a day in the life helps. A little bit about my background was I started in a sales role. I moved into a marketing demand gen role, and then I moved into an ops role where it straddled both marketing and sales for a while. So putting yourself in the shoes of a BDR, of a sales rep, of the marketing team that you're trying to support is super critical, whether you have that career path yourself or you just voluntarily say, I want a day in the life of a BDR. I want a day in the life of a sales rep. To understand where their challenges are will make your services that much more invaluable. I mean, we all want someone to appreciate the work we're putting in behind the scenes, and sales does too, and marketers do as well, and the finance team does as well. If you can understand how they're tying revenue back to the cost center that is marketing, which is a super complex cost center for in some businesses, you make their life easier, they're going to make your life easier. You're going to have a better partnership. So for me, I would say the best thing you can do is either try out those different roles before you settle into operations, or voluntarily step in once a quarter to a day in the life and make their lives easier with the systems or the processes that you're putting into place. That will kind of give you a groundswell of advocates. Ask questions. That's another big thing. Ask questions of your leadership. What are their biggest priorities? We should all know what the priorities are for the business, but how does that translate into reflecting results against those priorities? What indicators do you come together and align on that show the results against the priorities for the business? So asking questions, asking your team members what they're doing to achieve those goals, and helping become that translator between the two. I think any operations role becomes can elevate into a leadership role if they're understanding the different teams they're supporting better, as well as their nuance. As Sean mentioned earlier, you can't be an expert in analytics and campaign execution and sales and marketing and all of it, but as long as you're asking a lot of questions and understanding what they're trying to accomplish and seeing how that ties to other teams, you become that bridge between the organizations. And staying current with technologies it feels like an impossible ask, but it's also critical, right? We've all seen that slide, the MarTech slide of how many different technologies are coming out in any given year to support marketing.
The one where every single logo is a pixel on the screen.
Right.
Because there's just so many of them. I am in no way saying that you need to know how to use all of them or even a handful of them, right, really well, but to understand the future of where you could find efficiencies for your team based on their needs, keeping up with networking, keeping up with technology is going to be one of the ways that you can help the team become more efficient, because every time you add some pipeline ARR that's required by the team, you can't add 6 new headcount. So how do we find efficiencies in what we're doing?
Can I ask, in your experience, did your sales background help you sell yourself?
I would say, especially at the beginning, yes. Because sitting there and understanding how hard it is to hear no so often, or or silence often, understanding where their priorities are and how they're trying to make their money, and early days of setting up infrastructure so that, I want to track, I'm sending you leads, I want to know if they're any good, right? I'm sending you what I assume to be qualified leads, and I don't want to keep sending them if you don't find value on them, and I want you to report back on that. Now I started with, I don't know if they're good, a little bit of humble pie there, right? I'm starting with I'm not assuming that everything I'm sending you is perfect. I'm trying to be a great partner and get really good response from you on if it's quality or not quality in terms of leads that you should be following up on. But then going in that day in a life of, how many clicks does it take for you to give me the information? Where can I automate? You've heard me say this a lot on our calls, Anthony. Automatically make things happen for them is my goal. How do I seamlessly make the infrastructure work so in their day-to-day, they're performing their natural clicks or performing their natural follow-ups, and the systems are automatically behind the scenes working for them. And then in turn, making their life easier, but also getting reporting back. They found that was a partnership, but they also understood that I got where they were coming from, right? I understood how daunting sales could be at times, so they were willing to partner with me.
Yeah, you built some street cred. Say, hey, I've held a bag too.
Yeah.
I know what it takes.
I wish I had that street cred.
We could put you in a sales role if you want.
Hey, it might be a good idea. Yeah, I think one thing that clicked for me a couple of years ago was that I realized that marketing ops is one of the unique advantages of being in marketing operations and trying to move into more of a leadership position is that marketing ops is one of the only places where you can almost directly help any team in the go-to-market function, or any role or any specialization, right? That's kind of unique, right? There's probably something you can do as a marketing ops manager that can make obviously a sales rep's life easier, but can also make a digital marketer's life easier, and can also make a content writer's easier, and can also make an enablement person's life easier, and even a finance person's life easier, right? So there's so many people that you can help, and what that unlocked for me was this curiosity of like, hey, what do you care about in your role, and how can I help you, right? And you don't, to AMC's point, you don't have to be a salesperson, but what you should be doing is meeting with salespeople, ideally one-on-one, so they can feel like they can speak their mind unbiased about what's going well and what's not going well, and what they care about and what their priorities are and what their pain points are. Because that'll really help paint the picture for you of what you can do to help. And I think that'll just come naturally. And then the last thing that I'll say about how to move into a leadership role within marketing operations, again, it's another great thing that AMC said, which is marketing ops people by nature tend to be logical, analytical, fact-based, right? And that can cause them to be maybe a little bit more quiet in meetings where brainstorming is happening and strategizing is happening, right? So I think pushing yourself as a marketing ops person to not just lean on the facts that you know and the data that you have confidence in, but also lean on your intuition a little bit more and push yourself to be opinionated, even when you don't feel like you know everything. Newsflash, probably everyone else in that room doesn't know a whole lot about it either, but everyone's voicing an opinion, right? And so this was advice that was actually given to me by a previous manager of hey, voice your opinion more. You have good thoughts, right? And you know more about the data and the systems and the performance of the business than most. So lean on that. Be opinionated in those meetings, and that will, it all kind of comes back together. That'll allow you to be seen more as a strategic partner, which will kind of position you for that promotion.
Well, I think the most difficult thing to do in business is make decisions.
Yep.
And a lot of people have the perception that, just look at the data will tell you what to do. The data at best is going to tell you half the story, mm-hmm. and will be a component in making a decision, but you're not going to have data for everything. And especially when you're building a company that's scaling, doing new things, you're not going to have data around the thing you haven't done yet.
Right.
So you have to have some courage, make decisions, and be the person who's willing to put their ideas out there. Mm-hmm. I think that goes a really long way. And then use the data when you can to support your story too.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, I think this has been an incredible roadmap to understand how to take a nascent marketing operations function. Maybe you have a marketer doing it in their half-time. You don't even have somebody full-time yet. Taking it all the way to a fully scalable function that is operating like a well-oiled machine. And some of the big takeaways that I think are really important for those who are listening is when to bring on the right roles. So that senior manager level that you can bring in, supercharge them with agencies and fractional support when you can. When the level of decision making becomes the bottleneck, or you have so much work in one area that it makes sense to bring it in-house, those are the next ones that you bring into the team. Don't forget to track your work. Mm-hmm. So use a system, track your time. It sounds like the creative team's not going to want to do that, but do it if you can. And then if you're looking to lead, make sure you're sharing your opinion, tell the story, empathize with the people that you're serving, mm-hmm. and make sure that at the end of the day, you're invested in everybody else's success. And in return, I'm sure it'll be yours. So AMC, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
We are blessed with your royalty on our podcast. Sean, thank you for your insights. As always, it's just an incredible wealth of knowledge. And I hope this isn't the last one that we do AMC, and I hope we get to spend some more time together.
Yeah, please no.
So much more that we had to kind of focus this one here, but if there's any particular area we want to dive deeper into, I'd be happy to do it. It's a lot of fun, and we love working with you guys.
Awesome. No, it's been great. I could talk about this stuff with AMC all day. So hopefully,
we do.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully we get a chance to do this again.
Awesome. AMC, Sean, thank you so much, and looking forward to the next one.